Right, so I want to make a video updating everyone as usual and then get into some other important stuff. As usual, lots of big news to talk about, so getting right into it. Canada's up to 82,899 confirmed cases, 6,278 dead. The active cases in Alberta are now down to 814. I believe we were down from 870 roughly the other day. So the number of active cases went way down compared to the confirmed cases because we only had 18 confirmed cases yesterday. So um, the number of confirmed cases every day seems to continuously go down, but yet there's no word from the government on when we can move on because um, you hear all these people constantly say, "Oh, watch 2 weeks from now. We reopen 2 weeks from now. We're gonna have this massive spike." But yet they're not waiting 2 weeks. I've heard that I don't know if it's confirmed, but I've heard from multiple people, so I assume it would be. Um, June 19th is the day they're looking at going towards phase two. Like, what are we doing? That's like almost 4 weeks from now. Like, and we're already in this over a week. Like, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And like I keep pointing out to, like I say, one of the easiest ways to decide whether or not we should reopen, and if so, how fast, is look at other places. Have they had any issues along the way? And because we know that none of those other places had any significant issues, most of them literally none whatsoever, it's safe to say that we waiting 2 weeks is overkill if you ask me. But if you want to do that, go ahead, do that. You don't wait 2 weeks, give it a day or two if you want to evaluate the new case. Give it maybe 2 or 3 days, see if there's a clear spike in cases. When there isn't, because we already know that there isn't, and there isn't going to be, at least in all the other cases, then just keep opening. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And the one other thing I've seen on this morning, I think it was yesterday, but I've seen this morning on CBC, they're talking a ton about this park in Toronto that was just packed yesterday or the day before. I don't remember what day it was. And oh, it's so terrible. And you have Doug Ford calling people selfish. And no, Doug Ford, people aren't selfish. They just realize that the lockdowns are BS, that they don't work. Social distancing is pseudoscience. Masks, although they definitely prevent the spread if you're sick. If you're not sick, there's no point in wearing them because, if anything, they have negative health effects. Um, so that's the stuff to bring up too that I've brought up. And the thing that bothers me most is that you have the government who has handled this worse than someone like me, Joe Blow on the internet, not an expert, would have handled it better than these people who are supposed to be experts. Again, there's reports coming out, I think it was yesterday, that the government is still has the big shortage of PPE. I literally was saying over a month ago. Again, if you would have went back and if you remember my videos, or you go back early to mid-April, what was I saying? You know, uh, we should stock up on PPE, give it 2 or 3 weeks, and then reopen. Now we have the government over a month later saying, "Oh, we have no PPE. We can't reopen." Like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you doing? Like I say, Joe Blow on the internet, no expertise whatsoever in the field, is ahead of you the is ahead of the game when it comes to this. Like, what are we doing? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I don't want to brag or anything. It's just true. Like, I literally have been saying all this stuff. Again, I said, yeah, borders do work, masks do work. Guess what? Now they went from don't wear a mask to we're going to force you to wear a mask. They went from borders don't work to we're going to force you to enforce personal borders. Like, how does this make any sense? So again, I wanted to bring that up. I believe it's still 6 people in the ICU. We're down to 48 people in the hospital. Again, only 7 people in the hospital north of Calgary. Only 7 people. We're talking a population of about 3 million people, give or take a little bit, and we have 7 people in the hospital. Now, I was talking with family yesterday, and um, I continuously hear these kind of stories, um, online and in person. And I mean, the first thing to bring up is that I'm in the group of people, probably because I live in an area that wasn't hit very hard, but still, nonetheless, it's enough to point out, is that I don't know anyone who knows anyone who has had the virus. Like, no, I'm talking probably hundreds of people. None of them know anyone. Um, Other than people, I guess, who work in the healthcare field. But that's obviously going to be something that's, I would say, kind of an exception to the rule, because they're people that specifically are seeking out people that are sick, in a way. But the point being is that, okay, well, one family member is talking about someone they know who has cancer and is in their 40s and can't get their treatments anymore because they're non-essential apparently, and they're going to die. They're going to die from this because they can't get their treatments. They're in their 40s. Again, this isn't someone in their 70s or 80s who's probably going to die soon anyways. This is someone in their 40s that has, a spouse and kids that they're supposed to be, spending their life with. They aren't even that old. So they're going to die because of this. I also have another family member who knows someone who's a nurse in a small to medium sized town that we were talking about. And they said, yeah, we've had more people commit suicide than have got the virus, let alone die from the virus. So I keep hearing stories like this, and like I say, I'm constantly skeptical because I mean, I don't think I'm an outlier. I just appear like I'm an outlier. So again, I'm constantly skeptical. The thing is that the more information that keeps coming out, the more it makes the things that I'm talking about appear correct. So that's the thing when it comes to anything, is that you constantly need to be doubting your worldview. You constantly need to be questioning things, because the more you question things, the more you're going to lead to the truth. And it's like I say with this whole the park thing in Toronto and everywhere, is that the people clearly recognize that this is completely overblown. Now, even most of the people who are just pure sheep that'll do whatever the government tells them, they understand that it's complete BS. Like I say, social distancing is pseudoscience. It sounds good in theory, but it doesn't work in practice. Masks, again, you should definitely wear one if you're sick, but if you're not, you shouldn't wear one. So that's the one thing to bring up too. And like I say, we could have a boy who cried wolf scenario, that if there is, which again I don't believe there will be, but even if there is a small second wave, the government is going to blow it out of proportions just like they did the first one. So we could have a second wave that isn't even nearly as bad as the first, and yet the government's saying, "Oh, here's doomsday. They keep it locked down, or we're all going to die." Crowd to be, "Yeah, well, doomsday's here now. I told you so. It's doomsday." And people aren't going to believe them. That's why we need to be talking about this too, because if we do have a doomsday second wave, or even a virus in the near future, everybody's going to remember that, hey, remember that time when the government forced us to shut everything down and half destroy our lives, for something that had a death rate comparable to the flu for most people? Yeah, do you remember that? Yeah, we're not going to take this seriously. Like, that will probably happen if we have another thing that happens within the next 10 to 20 years, because most people will remember this. So that's why the government, another reason on top the million reasons it seems of how the government is botching this, and how there's going to be negative ramifications in the future. So this is something that I was talking about. I just wanted to talk a little bit more about. And it's from Dr. Fauci, saying staying closed for too long could cause irreparable damage. And again, I've been saying this for over a month now, and now we have the quote unquote experts finally coming out and admitting it. Like, again, why am I Joe Blow on the internet, don't claim to be an expert in the area, um, ahead of the curve? Like, why am I ahead of the curve? Now, I'm ahead of the curve because I'm paying attention to reality. Again, it doesn't take an expert to figure most of this stuff out. Like, it really doesn't. Um, for the simple reason that, hey, the death rate is comparable to the flu for most people. For the people that it isn't, they can stay quarantined. The rest of us go back to our normal life. It's such a simple solution. It's not even funny. Um, so again, yeah, I've been talking about this, and again, now we even have the people that were champions of the lockdown talking about how great the lockdown was, that are now saying, yeah, it's pointless. We shouldn't be doing it. So again, like, I don't understand what it's going to take, but anyways, and like, there's also people saying, oh yeah, the government's reopening. Why do you care so much? Well, no, I just said that the government in Alberta is probably going to wait another 4 weeks to even go to phase two. We're going to be in mid to late July, if that, before we're actually even open. By then, the summer's already mostly done. Um, So that's why I'm complaining so much. And the other reason I'm complaining so much is that it's BS. We all know it's BS. Anyone who's paying attention. Um, so this is something that happened about a week ago, but I still wanted to touch on anyway because it's a very relevant story. So China is basically making more and more moves towards taking over Hong Kong, and it's something that's very scary for the simple reason that number one, it should scare you that that we have countries doing this to other countries. Now China believes that Hong Kong is their territory, which it isn't, but they believe it nonetheless. Now the problem with it, I mean, the first thing being is that if we just stand idly by and do nothing, then who's to say that we might not be next? Like, who's to say we won't be next? Now, I think that I don't think that I'm not suggesting they would take over Canada. I mean, I believe the states would be like, hey, we're gonna have some real trouble if you guys are trying to do that. But who's to say that a different country isn't next? Maybe a country closer to them. So that's the problem, is that we need to be concerned about this. We don't want to be overly concerned about this because you don't want to spark a nuclear war, but you have to be concerned. So you have to play a balancing game that you don't want to be too harsh, but you need to let them know that this is not okay. And the fact that the Trudeau government's largely silent about this just goes to show where their loyalties lie. Um, so this is another story I came across. Now, there's kind of two aspects to this story. Number one, the Liberal government doesn't seem to care or seem to even want to suggest the idea of reducing immigration, which, again, anybody with a brain, or at least anybody paying attention, knows that we need to cut immigration. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Um, Increased immigration reduces median wages. Increased, and again, it's simple supply and demand too. People on the left constantly like arguing that, but no, it's simple supply and demand. If you have 100 job openings and you have 150 people fighting for those job openings, versus, let's say, 200, then it's very simple to say that the employers can be more picky, or more selective. In other words, they can be like, hey, I have an immigrant, or even a Canadian for that matter. I mean, it doesn't matter, but usually it's the people that come from countries to where the wages are lower, saying, hey, I'll do the job for 15 bucks an hour. The Canadian won't do it for 20, or the Canadian will do it for 20. Who am I going to pick? Now, again, the left constantly likes harping on corporations for being so greedy and all this kind of stuff, but yet they're completely silent about corporations using cheap foreign labor to enrich themselves. Now, like I said, the left couldn't care less about greedy corporations. They only care about it when they perceive it's capitalism that benefits from whatever it is they're talking about. They don't care when it's socialism or liberalism that are benefiting. Like I say, immigrants from the third world overwhelmingly vote for the left, so that whenever that benefits them, so all of a sudden they're silent about it. When the corporations benefit, and they benefit as well, all of a sudden they're silent about it. When it comes to taxing the corporations and the greedy CEOs, then all of a sudden the morality and the ethical nature of it all of a sudden shifts, that hey, we need to tax them so we can have more of it. It's just always what's in it for them. What's in it for them? If it benefits the corporations and they get a kickback, as in more votes, yeah, they're all for it. If all of a sudden it goes towards taxing, well, then all of a sudden, yeah, I want to steal their money, so let's tax them more. So that's the thing to bring up. And immigration should absolutely be cut. We should have no immigration whatsoever unless there's a surplus of jobs available. That is it. No family reunification, none of that BS. And there's no evidence to support that kind of stuff. Now, the left constantly argues, oh, we need that kind of stuff. It's the right thing to do. Well, uh, the left constantly talks about in the history, in when it comes to history, though, the only reason that the West is rich is because we pillaged all the wealth from the wherever, Africa, the Middle East, wherever you're talking about. But yet they never bring up how immigration largely brings the smartest people from other countries, and poor people, but a lot of the smart people as well. I mean, just think of, I mean, the good example is how many South African doctors. I mean, I was from a small town where there was more South African doctors than there was doctors from everywhere else in the world. So, uh, we are bringing the smartest people that would be the people that would be contributing the most. Those would be people that would be starting businesses, that would be coming up with innovative solutions to improve their economy. So, and we are taking those people from the African countries, from the Middle Eastern countries, and we're largely just leaving the poorest and the least intelligent, at least on average. Because if you're very intelligent in those countries, your upside isn't as much as if you're in Canada or the States, because your upside there is not as much. Here it's millions of dollars. So of course you're going to want to come to Canada, and that's the problem, is that we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be bringing the poor, not because we hate the poor, but because we can't afford it. We're going to be in a $300-400 billion deficit this year. Until the deficit is completely gone, unemployment's at 3%, homelessness is largely a non-issue, then we can turn around and look at bringing in some refugees. But until then, no refugees, at least if you ask me. And I know there's a lot of people that believe in that sentiment. Now, the last thing to bring up when it comes to this is Jason Kenney announced that they will be, I don't know if he said for sure, but they will be strongly looking at reducing immigration coming out of this, which I've been very hard on Jason Kenney because of this whole situation, and rightfully so. Um, but this is another step towards something that's going to be good for Alberta. I know there's a lot of people that cannot stand Jason Kenney. I mean, namely people that are normally right-wing voters, or at least not on the left. And you have to give people credit where credit is due. I don't like the idea of completely writing someone off. I don't like that idea, because if you completely write, and again, completely writing someone off isn't the right way to go, because what if they change? Now, you can say, yeah, there's a 99% chance, whatever. But you need to at least give credit where credit is due. Like if Justin Trudeau came out tomorrow and said, yeah, we're going to cut immigration, I would mention it in a video and say, good job, Justin Trudeau. I would mention that. But until that happens, I'm not going to mention it. Now, Jason Kenney did do the right thing. This will help Alberta's economy if they cut immigration. Let's just hope that it's significant, because if it's some small amount, then it won't make much of a difference. The last thing I wanted to talk about is New York basically threatening to set up fences at beaches and parks, possibly as well. I think they just say beaches, if people keep ignoring social distancing guidelines. And it's funny because you have all these leftists that cite how, oh, walls don't work. Like when it comes to the border along Mexico, oh, they don't work. Walls are racist. Borders don't work. And you had Tam and all these idiots from Canada talking about that too. And but then all of a sudden they do work when it, like I say, all of a sudden they do work. Now, do they work perfectly? No. But do they work? Are they more effective than nothing? Absolutely. So that's the one thing I wanted to bring up. Is this is just another uh, leftist contradiction. That's basically why I wanted to bring it up. That they can't keep their arguments straight. It's just we'll literally make up our argument as we go along, basically, and that's the thing that really bothers me about them. So, anyway, if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Check out my PayPal and email. I got links in the description. Again, appreciate any donations, but at the very least, just hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And last thing, as always, check me out on Twitter if you haven't already, and check me out on BitChute if you haven't already. Again, all the links in the description, so you can find it all there.